num, num num, birdie num num.
Don't do that, Jesus Christ! You're gonna get me killed! Out of here!
Oh, Billy. Ah!
I'm just messing with you.
And we are live, and I am just messing with you. My evolving introduction that I tried to cover a lot of different bases, including why do we live in a world where men have nipples, Bertie Numnum, Peter Sellers, the Freemason, and I guess I should add something with warm leatherettes. But it evolves, and either way, everything is evolving. So welcome everybody to AB Live. So excited to see everybody already going into the chat room, both on Facebook and on YouTube, although we can usually only deal with questions from those of you on YouTube. Maybe we can answer questions later at the Inner Sanctum of Gnosis Facebook group. But again, technology is evolving. The important thing is by some algorithmic demonology, we all can connect now remotely, and these are interesting times, but we pass gnosis any way we can. So tonight we are very excited to have Anthony Garcia, who was here recently in June when he discussed his book Artificial Intelligence and the New Messiah. Anthony, bienvenidos otra vez.
Gracias por estar aquí. Thank you for having me.
Pleasure is all ours, and I would say press 1 for English, oprima el número 2 para español, but we haven't evolved yet to that part. We'll get a UN translator soon para ser español, but so it is. And with us too, we've got the Moondog Vance. Vance, how are you doing on this Mercury day?
Not too bad. Better than my typing.
What are you answering? Typing too fast?
Oh yeah, like Nate came up and I said, "Hey, no, Nate, my finger didn't make it down to the end." So
that's you can't do voice recognition though.
Yeah,
can't do yourself that in the corner. What is he babbling about in the corner? So awesome. Well, I hope everybody had a good Halloween weekend, and of course a good Dia de los Muertos, those 2 days. And I hope everybody's doing good as the liminal spaces get, they get bigger, you might say, and the spirits start coming through in these darkening times. Good time to talk to your ancestors, good time to talk to the spirits. So, but we always talk to spirits here. And Anthony, your book, Artificial Intelligence and the New Messiah, that's part of a trilogy, right? Or tell the audience more about your work and the
Correct.
work you're
doing. It is part of the trilogy. The first book that came out in 2014 was the Portal of Light, followed up 2-3 years later with the Shared Lives Twin Sun, and then this year, Artificial Intelligence and the New Messiah.
And by trilogy, you mean how are these books related? Is there a theme to it, or just...
Well, the theme really is really one sentence, and that was that from the very early book, the sentence was, "How is she to be treated?" And that really caused the ball rolling of who are they talking about, when was it supposed to happen, and what's the future going to hold? And that's really how it got me to the third book.
Cool. And you are having another book published in 2022 from what
2022 is very interesting. I've come up a book based on a real life character named Esteban. He was an African slave conquistador brought over by Spain into Florida area. And his journey is about 4 or 5 years from Florida to New Mexico. And he is one of 300 conquistadors that made this journey, and only 4 survived.
Wow.
And he's one of them. So I'm going to tell his story and from a fictional point of view, but I think it's based on a true life story.
Ooh, that's exciting. Love that kind of history.
Yes.
And what was so dangerous in Florida back then?
Well, they arrived. There
We
was
still had alligators, right?
yeah, they arrived. They ran into tribes. They were hoping to find some Amazon gold, Tenochtitlan, and thought they would find the riches, and they found nothing. So all of a sudden, they found themselves by themselves, and this journey began. And the ships that they came with deserted them. So they're trying to survive and get back. And they knew that the Spanish had some soldiers in Mexico, in northern Mexico, and they said we got to get there. Well, that was about 1,000 miles away, so that journey started from there.
Yeah, I'm sure. And wearing all that armor and all that
Well,
equipment, 90-degree weather, mosquitoes. Yeah,
they got
it's
eaten
gonna
up.
hurt.
That's exactly what happened.
It's gonna hurt, man. But yeah, gold gets people moving. And
Yes.
interesting, somebody in the chat was talking about the Mayans. Did you ever, were you ever interested or engaged in the Mayan 2012 prophecy? That did anything for you?
Well, the Mayans are interesting because it ties to this story. The Mayans built the Mayan city of I pronounced this properly. Teotihuacan, and that was the pyramids, and that was based on Orion's belt. They followed that pattern. So I find that interesting that they would follow that pattern and base their city on that, and it always made me wonder why choose that.
Yeah, well, yeah, they were obviously very influenced by the stars. So
Absolutely.
that's that was their life, and that's what they did.
Yep.
So, and interesting, we still don't know what really happened to the Mayan Empire. It was already gone by the time the conquistadores arrived.
There's about 500 years apart. I visit one of the pyramids in southern Mexico, Honduras, and they said it was left alone, and the tribe that came in, they just said it's a private city, don't go in there. So the citizens of the next empire, they left it alone, and that's why it was so well kept. So they respected who they were.
Very cool. Well, I have been to I lived in Mexico, so in La Ciudad, so I did go to Tenochtitlan many times,
Yeah.
both the sun and the moon. It's pyramids. Whenever we'd have visitors from Portugal, the United States, that was the one thing they wanted to do. We got to, but this was a long time ago. I don't think people, but it's nice to know that back then, tourist people that came to visit, that was the main event, was the pyramids. So, and it's worth it. Of course, it's an incredible experience. You won't forget it. That's for sure.
We'll find that the mystics then, along with the Essenes, were at the same level in terms of I'll just use, for a better word, the elites or the intelligence of a community kept that stuff private. And it happens with the Essenes, it happens with the Mayans, it happens with the Aztecs, happens even with our country now. So that's kind of how it works.
Yeah. It's the only way to survive the vagaries of those in power and those wanting to advance themselves through material goods or using magic for the wrong reason.
Yeah.
It's a tale as old as time, no matter what country or time you're in.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, for those of you in the chat room, you know the drill. If you have any questions for Anthony, please type them in all capital letters, throw as many or question marks. If you do a super chat, of course, we will put you at the top of the line. And as always, and I'll keep repeating, we will have as soon as we are no longer live through the demonology of technology, it will be on YouTube, and then tomorrow I will put the audio version out on all podcasters, iTunes, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, all these places that have all podcast providers of that you yourself like to listen to it. And of course, in the members section, you'll find it too. I know people have different tastes. Some of you always email me. I will not go on YouTube. Others of you, I will not stream. Others of you want to download physical copies in your hard drive. So everybody has different tastes, and everybody has different, you might say, enemies on the internet that you just can't handle and you try to avoid. For example, Facebook now allows you to stream their podcasts. And remember, Vance, we did a poll on Facebook and everybody was against it because ironically, everybody hates Facebook. But
yeah, for the old-fashioned people, we'll mail them a listing of the show, a line printer listing.
Yeah, a thumb drive, a CD-ROM.
Floppy disk.
Yeah. So I try to give you the show in any version that you yourself prefer, including private RSS feeds. So other than that, so from housekeeping, we got some exciting shows coming up. Next week, we have the great Mark Stavish discussing the path of Freemasonry. He will grant the spiritual intent of Freemasonry and the various tools of the craft that you can use, even if you're not a Freemason. And as Mark is a guest, it's going to be incendiary because he likes to explore and open up issues and places that most people won't dare, and a brilliant mind. Then we'll have a Finding Hermes with Gigi Young, not Jung. Yes. And she will be discussing psychic healing and how to survive the apocalypse, and more exciting shows coming up too, including an AB Live with Amanda Radcliffe on Mary Magdalene and countering the issue or the scholarship that's growing that says that the Cathars never existed, which is kind of the same vibe as those saying that Gnosticism never existed. So that should be exciting, and other great shows, including shows on Manly P. Hall, the real identity of Lucifer, and a whole bunch of variety, always with that Gnostic sensibility to it. So that's it for house cleaning that I have right now. So Anthony, why don't you take it away? I have plenty of notes here, but before we start, give us the thesis of your latest book, Artificial Intelligence and the New Messiah, and then we can go with whatever you want to talk about.
Well, the book itself deals with the arrival of the Anointed One or the Messiah, and really what kind of effect that's going to have on the community of the world. And what's going to lay out is, obviously, you have sides taken. And one side's going to be, the artificial intelligence. If you look forward 50 or 100 years, how big that influence is going to be, and the elites that control that. And you're already seeing part of that with, big tech and that whole thing, how that plays out. Now with the elections, you're seeing, wow, this is pretty heavy. The other side of it is who's going to hold against them. It's going to be, the fundamental families and Christian groups. And then how that whole thing is going to play out and how the sides are going to develop. So the book really is about that, but it raises a big issue for some communities who say, well, the Messiah should not become. The Jewish community would say that because that's the end of days. Mm-hmm. Other communities say, no, maybe the Messiah would come and, the purpose is to grant additional life to our blue earth. And that's really my argument in my book is, what has to happen for our planet to continue to exist. Definitely has to deal with a healthy earth, healthy community, healthy families. And how is that going to play out with, the other side trying to, squash you, and how that's going to play out. So I think it's a very interesting book, and I think you enjoyed it.
I did enjoy it, and for all of you listeners, all you heretics out there, again, the interview was in June. I think it was June 13th, so you can just check it out here on the YouTube channel, and we go really in depth. And for the audience, the artificial intelligence and the technology used, do you see that as a neutral thing we're fighting for, or was this devised by the powers of darkness to enslave us?
I think it originates really with non-believers. They really don't have interest. They're looking for power and control. And, they move up quite rapidly and accumulate a lot of wealth very rapidly. I mean, something like I don't know, the big names, Zuckerberg's, they have 10 times the income of the other billionaires. It's just amazing to me. Then they have the power of technology to show their point of view. So it was planned, and it worked out for them, and people were kind of caught by surprise. So, it's a part of everything now.
And what do you think about all this space exploration, rockets in the sky, Elon Musk wanting us to go to Mars and all that stuff? Is
Well,
this
I
part
think,
of the agenda?
well, I think once, if they were to find another planet that had the kind of resources of water like we did, they'd be there pursuing that in a second. And, when you get to a point where they're just sending drones after drones and rockets to find another planet, that tells you maybe Earth is far gone, and they're going to let go of that, the powers to be. So we have to be careful about that. But you also have the fact that you have other alien beings that maybe have found us, and why is that? So you got two sides of it now.
Yeah, and started too as we're talking about the Dead Sea Scrolls. Vance, do you have a question or anything that you think we should clarify before continuing? Or
Not really. There's a couple of questions in the general questions in the chat room. You want to address those right
if
now?
they have to do with the Dead Sea Scrolls and kind of focusing on our last
Oh, yeah.
interview. Sure, yeah, please.
Yeah, one of them is from Jude DeLorca. How did the Essenes work into the history of the Messiah message? Relation between Messiah and the Essenes.
Well, the Messiah was expected by the Essenes, following the celestial equator, which I'm going to go into, but they expected an earth-born Messiah to be born. Where the Pharisees wanted a adult king, an adult person to help fight, or to motivate their citizenry to fight against the Romans, who were about to take over and sack all the temples and the cultural particles of Judea, and that's where it came out. So what won, or what existed, was the child Messiah known as the Nazarene.
Okay. Michael Musgrave also was wondering about the relationship of the Essenes to women. Did they disparage women, or did they believe in a divine feminine? What was their relationship with women?
Well, the Essenes very much believed in families. Although the Brotherhood themselves are mostly men, there were two parts of the Essene Brotherhood. One was in the Masada, which was the fort, which is about 12 miles southeast of Jerusalem, and then other large neighborhoods or areas where the Essenes existed, like Galilee. Those had more families. So they very much respected that. And if you know anything about the Jewish faith, the women provide the educational training. It was no different there with those families. So very much positive and respected women.
So not really much different than Jews in general, then, as far as their relationship with women.
No, I think they valued them very much.
How about the? This is from me. There's some people always said that Jesus was once an Essene. What do you think of that?
That's accurate. So it comes from Mary's family, and Mary, Ruth, they were all Essenes. John the Baptist, his first cousin, who dressed in the camel hair to go, preach. He was an Essene. So the way he pointed out the weaknesses of the Pharisees, that was his point of view, but that came from the Essenes.
Okay. And they didn't believe in the Pharisees and what they were doing at the temple, right? They were kind of protesting against the current practices.
They were like our American hippies. They did not look at former religion, former institutions. They were hippies. Lived off the land, lived one with the animals, with the plants, with the herbs for healing. Very much like our American hippies, but they were very religious in nature, though.
All right. Well, we had one just come in, I guess, before we move on. This is a big one. I'm not sure you can do this, or maybe it'll come out during the show. But Brendan Fowler wants you to provide a breakdown of the Nag Hammadi library versus the Dead Sea Scrolls. That's
whoa. Yeah, I'll be back in 2 days, Anthony.
We'll be here for a couple of days. That's a Miguel question, maybe. So
yeah, there is no
different things.
There's
some overlap.
Well, for example, Here's a quick example. You do find scrolls with the names of the angels. Now, why would you have the names of the angels? Because you're going to use them to control the angels or passwords or one of those things. So that's, of course, the Gnostics had the name of angels and archons in their writing. So you do have this, I don't know, we'll call it Jewish mysticism, Gnostic apocalypsism, but there was that sort of ancient Kabbalah. That so there are connections, of course, with Gnostics, Essenes, and the Dead Sea. You know, there's a big overlap, but I think, Anthony, I think the big one is they were done with the governments, with the corrupt culture, so they were rebelling in a spiritual, magical way and just isolating themselves from society one way or another.
They avoided the Pharisees as much as they could. Didn't look, they consider themselves real Israel. In a few minutes, I'll go really how they used angels, and I think you'll find that very interesting.
Cool. Yeah, definitely did that. And of course, as some said, the Sethians, who are part of the Nag Hammadi library, as John Turner and others said, were also breakaway Jews who decided to get away from the corrupt temple because it was in the pocket of the Romans and black magic and just dark powers. Of course, they ended up more eventually in Alexandria instead of staying in Palestine. So, cool. Well, I think if that's it, Vance, we'll let Anthony.
One more.
One more.
Sure.
Quick one.
Yeah,
sure.
Chris Newberry is wondering if you've heard of Ralph Ellis and his theory that Essenes were the leaders of the Jewish revolt.
The Jewish revolt from the Essenes?
Yeah. Or the Essenes led the Jewish revolt, is what he's saying.
You know, there's a possibility. Well, the ones that were in the Masada, who were the strongest and most educated leadership group of the Essenes, as you know, they died from suicide by blade to not give themselves up to the Romans.
Mm-hmm.
But there were a couple central figures, the teacher of righteousness, for example, who is the leader of the Essenes, and the prince of the congregation. They were never identified within the Essene group by I would say by design, but I'm not sure they found them, or could they be part of that revolt? So to answer his question, I think there's a possibility such strong leadership didn't escape and they were part of the revolt because that would be their nature.
Right.
There was a group that did want to fight the Romans, very small group, because most of the men there were pacifists, but a small group did want to fight the Romans, and we never found out who they were and where they ended up. So to answer that question, I would say there's a strong possibility.
Okay.
Yeah, Ralph Ellis has written. God, he's written a lot of books, and he's almost been on the show, but he's either traveling or I'm here. But hopefully one day. But yeah, he's got more books than we could. So many entry points with Mr. Ellis. All right. Well, if there's no questions, oh God, I can't talk tonight. I think I've had too much coffee. I've had a lot of coffee tonight. I don't know why. Oh yeah, the kids are sick. That's why I've had a lot of coffee. I've been working on it's like I'm on call every time they call and they want something. So yeah, but that's why I've had a lot of coffee and it's affecting my brain. All right. Well, Anthony, you want to do the angels, or which way would you like to go?
Well, I'm going to start. I got a couple of things I'll mention off the bat. A little bit about who the Essenes were. As I mentioned, they were hippies. They connected to nature and spirituality. They did not attend temple. They avoided temple goers, didn't like that judgment. But more of a very poor community because they didn't have a lot of money, didn't live off of money. And that's why they consider themselves real Israel. And that's very important because they really wouldn't give in to other things, those type of things. But I thought was very important about your program is that people look at Gnostic things or esoteric things and they think it's like way out there and there's no connection. And when I saw my writings and I was doing research, and I go, there's a very strong connection. And I want to bring something today that, your hands can touch, you can feel and touch it. It's tangible, you can see it. And you have answers to things when you leave today. So with that, let me keep going. When I ever do any research on a book, and I think I've done my 6 books now, the first thing I do is look for the root language. So before Hebrew, and really before Aramaic, which was the language of Jesus at that time, there was Paleo Hebrew, and that came from the Jewish mystics. So those are the men that spoke a rudimentary Hebrew language that actually followed the stars. And one of the first persons that could really connect to describe them was Flavius Josephus, or Flavius Josephus. And this is how he described the Essene community. And before I start this, he had joined the Essene community when he was about 16 for a couple, 2-3 years, and then left the group. But this is how he describes them. They are scrupulous students of the ancient literature, the art, and that literature being the Book of Moses or the Torah, the ardent students in the healing of disease using plants and prayer, of the root offering, protection, and of the properties of the stones being lapidary. So with that said, you had a pretty good understanding of, who they were and what they stood for. So much different than the Pharisees. Now, if you could pull up, let me get that globe for you. Sure. And I want you to, while he's picturing this, you guys are sitting down, hopefully kind of trying to figure out all the stuff we're talking about. Yeah. But if you picture yourself, let's say you were a shepherd in Palestine.
All right, where is it? Hold on one second. Where did it go?
That's a pretty good picture there of the.
Yeah, that's my desktop. No, that's not it. Oh wait, it's a Word document. There you go.
Word doc.
All right.
And how dark, that big that gets. So if you picture yourself in a shepherd, and we have those in Colorado, and they're sitting there. Let's say you're in Palestine, and you get the campfires going. The sheep are asleep, and you're out there thinking, and all of a sudden you're being explained, the Jewish history from a astrology point of view. And it's funny, the creator works counterclockwise from left. So instead of writing right to left, he works from left to right, going in a circle. And the reason that's important is because if you understand this globe, when these people were talking about the constellation, first of all, they knew the world wasn't flat. They knew it was round, right, just like this. So if you look at this map closely, you can see towards the bottom, you see the gray banner. You're going to see the constellation at the bottom, like Libra, Virgo, Leo, Cancer, as we all know about those. But then you're going to see Taurus. And why it's important is because in the Jewish community, an important Jewish historical figure arises typically at the beginning of an age. So in the age of Taurus, you have Moses. Next is the age of Aries. You have Daniel. The next important was the age of Pisces, with the Jesus of Nazareth, referred to as the Nazareth. And that age just ended in the year 2012. And so that's when the Exodus play came to me. So in 2012, the next age that appears is the age of Aquarius. What's the next important historical figure there? And that's on the top part of that banner. The age of Aquarius is going to be, in my opinion, is the anointing one. That's going to be a Jewish Messiah. Now that creates a lot of controversy when you say that, because it leads to whole different opinions and points of view and things that can happen. But that's very crucial to understanding my premise. So go ahead and take that down again. So where that takes us is that the language, again, is Paleo Hebrew. And the Essenes of that time spoke 2 primary languages, Paleo Hebrew, Hebrew at that time, or Aramaic, which is an Egyptian dialect language. And where that takes me is that when I did research on the book, and I want to share this with everybody, the book is based, I did my research on a book by the Dead Street Schools by Gisa Vermes, and he wrote it in 1962. And the Dead Street Scrolls were discovered in 1947 by a Bedouin young boy who kicked a soccer ball in the cave, and he heard some shards of pottery, and all of a sudden he said, "Hey, there's something here." Well, they found the scrolls there, and that they really changed everything. But within the scroll, the Dead Sea Scrolls themselves, the one that I focused on was on the Book of Enoch. And the Book of Enoch was not part of the at that point the Book of Moses, what the Torah community was studying. And in there they had in there the concepts of the Book of Astrology, the Book of Wisdom, the Book of Noah. And once I had those, I realized that this community really had access and ideas 2,000 years ago. And what was the rest of the world doing? They're writing on caves, or they probably didn't write at all. And so, that's how far ahead they were. And this is where I want to get into the angels. And that's why it's important. Within the Book of Enoch, they used angels in two different categories, two, three categories. One is a messenger, as Uriel, and he was important because he informed Noah of the upcoming flood. He used Uriel to time travel. They also used the angels as guardians or later saints. They called them Kuchima. And then they had some that they called them heavenly messengers, and that was Sarsadim and Malish. And they even considered Yahweh, the God himself, Malish Yahweh. And that was interesting how they used angels as part of their belief system. That is not normally done in the Torah religion. They don't believe in angels. They've never have. Time travelers they don't believe in. Came through later on in the Christian community, but that's where it comes from. So to answer that question about earlier question of where this goes to, it ends up in Christianity. Really, that's so interesting. But they also have what they call a dark angel. This is interesting. It was called Shed, Shed, and they had a special place for them, and it was kind of imprisonment. They called that Tartaros. And just so interesting, they put their demons there. And the reason why this is so important is because they knew that they were going to be pursued and followed and criticized by the temple Jews and the rabbis. So they used the concept, the English word is autoantomy, which is a dual meaning for a word. So when they referred to an animal, they would signify that animal was a human. Mm-hmm. And the humans then were signified as angels. So they wanted, this is how they conceal their thought, conceal their point of view. This later came out with Kabbalah. This is where the Kabbalah comes from. Sod is one of the bigger words within the Kabbalah. And it's real important to understand that, because you think you're talking about an angel and you think, well, that's so esoteric, it can't connect. Well, if you understand how they're writing, they're not trying to tell you an angel, they're trying to tell you humans, that's a human. And they're using that to conceal themselves. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Another big topic is they call it Gematria, Gematria. And that's where they conceal numeric values. That's really interesting. So, like the word chai tea, that means life. So they would use it where it meant the number 18. So if they give the Jewish community gives a gift, they multiply times 18 because that's good luck for them. Another word is like Ephraim, which is a cup measurement of 1/6. That helped me to determine the location of the heaven in my second book, Share Life Twin Sun. And the second coming of a Messiah, that's in Hebrews 1:16. That's what it's referring to. You see, 1/6, Hebrews 1/6. That's how they do it. That's how they hide things. So that's very important to understand how they're doing things. So I'm making the intangible tangible. That's really important. But what's really important about the Essenes is that they consider themselves healers, doctors. And they had a special name for themselves. That was a doctor was known as Rofe, and healing as Refuab. And they used water to heal, along with herbs. And so the water name was Mayim, baptism, Where's that come from? Right? Come from
Right.
mikvah. So you see how they take a word, they use it, then they conceal it. That's just what that kept them alive. So they were around probably 150 years before the Nazarene was born. So they knew, first of all, that the new constellation of Aquarius was coming. They knew somebody who was special was coming. They also knew it was going to be Earth-born, and who would that be? And that child would be very special. And that's kind of how they did things. So the concept of Sod, S-O-D, real important, because when I got the Exodus plate, the word carnation was in there 4 times. And I saw that and go, why do they use the carnation in there 4 times? And who are they referring to? They're referring to the Nazarene again. But they would also use words like in the Exodus play, it was tafila. That's a Hebrew word. They would never use that in a Christian play, but they did. And tefeyin is a concept used by the Essenes that means they would put a phylacteries, which are like a headband, and they put a square box on your forehead, and they would keep the writings in there. What was most popular was the Book of Deuteronomy, and specifically used what they called the Shema, and that was one of their prayers that they used for new members. With the hermanos, Latino hermanos, they use the alabados, and that's how it came to me. So it's very important. From there, I created an idea of the portal of light, what would be propulsion of how to get to this earth from another location. And the concept I used was time plus direct matter plus direct energy equals a conscious directive. And, you think that's way out there, but in a few seconds, I'm going to touch on Robert Oppenheimer and how they did things. They start with the broad concept and then focused in. Can you pull up, Miguel, those important words I shared with you, if you can?
Sí, un minuto.
What Miguel's going to pull up is what this gets to is Paleo Hebrew had words that.
Can you guys see it?
You can see half of it. Paleo, there you go. Go to the bottom part. Yeah. Go to the bottom, the Christian originations. Paleo Hebrew used words that were not in the Hebrew dictionary. And it's mostly because of focus, what the Paleo Hebrew speaking Essenes valued as important. So Yahshua, which means Joshua to many, or the Messiah, but the Essenes, they were expecting a salvation or a deliverance of Yahoo. That was a Nazarene. They also knew what was forthcoming later on, the Mashiach, which is the anointed one. From there, they had very Christian concepts. The Miachi Hamayatin, the resurrection of the dead. The Jewish community doesn't believe in that, but the Christian community picked up on that. And then the very important word is Gol Yach, which happens to be the word redeemer. That was not a part of the Pharisee study. They didn't use any of those 4 type of words. And then at the end, I had to throw this one in there for Miguel. Paul McCartney uses "Let It Be," and I know that's one of his favorites. And they call it Amien. And that story came to Paul. He had a dream about his mother, and something was upsetting to him, and she says, "Let it be." And I just thought that was interesting that it ended up there.
Love it. Cool.
Yes, that's so important. Now, let's go back to Miguel mentioned that he lived and studied in Mexico. And one thing about the way I want to give a feel for people that they're looking at the stars out there and they're saying, what does this all mean? And if you look at Orion's belt, the stars have a kind of a blue hue to them. And they just thought that was just so special. And then the pyramids of Gaza, they're in the same alignment with that. And then the Mayan Teotihuacan, the same thing. So, I guess what I'm trying to get to is once you get to a point where you're studying and talking at that level, I think people really share about that because they realize everybody's equal. It's about the work and study you put into this. That's real important. And the thing about Essenes, they had a very interesting view of life in the sense that because they studied the scrolls constantly, they wrote in the scrolls, they understood, they had conversations. They lived in the fort, for example, Masada. They lived with cisterns with water, and they were just very important to be so close to nature. But the concept was that he who controls time controls the world, because they consider themselves remnants of time. They understood the concept of the constellations. Who else did at that time? The other thing they did that you don't see too often happens in the Pharisee community, the Feast of the Wood Offering. And that was just something that they would light fire because they very much believed in the light. And so it seems very unique that way. And, when I was up studying at CU Boulder, I think there's a few peoples, I got the chance to visit the hippies north of Boulder up in the mountains. And they considered me like a banker. They didn't think I was like the Essene type, the nature type. They just look at me, and they were very basic. And they lived in school buses. It was so cold, you wouldn't believe. And in the back, they had drums to light the fires and to heat their food. And I used to hang out a little bit. And I was like, I thought they were really kind of cool. But they knew I wasn't one of them, and I was in that. But that was just so interesting that when I got to study Essenes, I was like, I've seen this before. But the big thing with the Essenes, they were fourth dimensional thinkers, in the sense, they understood even at that time frame. If you look at some of Salvador Dali's paintings, they've got that melted watch. They understood that there were dimensions. And we mentioned the top of those alien drones. They must be at a dimension 9 or something, or 7. And so they have a different point of view, and they look very different than us probably. So when I wrote this, when I saw in that the Exodus play talked about a leafy dawn passage, I knew that came from another, in my opinion, a planetary external. So when I saw that, I go, well, they have this writers, they have an understanding of that. So I worked with that. And
real quick, Anthony, so the audience knows I know the answer and we talked about it, but just in case, for those that are newer, what's the Exodus play?
The Exodus play was in 2011. I was in my home here. They knocked on my door and said we had. They were bringing me some alabados. These are hermanos from another location who were bringing me. I thought it was a cuaderno or notebook to translate from Spanish to English, which I'm used to doing. And they came in, 3 men with smiles on their face, and I looked. They gave me 2 cuadernos. One was the regular alabados for the songs of praise. The second one was about 5 times thick, and I looked at it, closer, and it was a play. And hermanos don't do plays. Can you imagine those guys doing a play in San Luis Valley? Yeah. So I looked at that, and I said, this is a play. And they laughed, and they said, well, you got to decipher this and figure out what this means to us. So I said, well, it took me a while. So I was like, well, scratching my head like, this is going to be a lot of work. But, I did figure out that it was a cryptic or concealed story of the Hebrew history. And that was hidden within a Christian community. So I knew it was very important. And that's how the Portal Light book came to be.
Awesome. Well, please continue.
Well, the other section I want to get to is this goes to the writer, the persons that from Fowler. I hope she's still listening. There were a couple of big mysteries. The prince of the congregation, they never figured out who that was. It was very much written about in the scrolls. He's recognized. They know he's a leader. And people say, well, are they referring to Noah? Is it Abraham? Is it whoever? And we never found that out. So if it was that concealed, and if it was a living person, then they have left and been part of the rebellion? High possibility. The other big person is the teacher of righteousness. We know for sure that was a leader. But right before the Romans were attacking, a new leadership came in, and I think that was led by a guy named Sagittarius, and so that the previous leadership either backed down or left. So that person from Fowler, if you want to look into that, the teacher of righteousness, if that's any alignment to what the rebellion or anything like that, I would be curious to hear about that. So there are mysteries about the scenes that aren't disclosed, like the lapidary, the study of stones, not looked into, not shared much about, but I think it's a big part of things. So in conclusion, I really want to just tie it together that the scenes were remnants of their time. They made tangible or real the celestial equator, the anointed one. The Paleo Hebrews bring to life, what they stood for and how they concealed things, and how they really used angels. People think they're just esoteric things. No, they were concealing other points of view, and then using numeric values to conceal things. And it was really something when I read about the biography of Robert Oppenheimer. He did the Manhattan Project here in Los Alamos, not too far from the 33rd equator again. But he called his scientists that he put together scientists of Luminatias. I'm telling you. When I saw that, I understood the light when he was after. And that's what these scenes did. They understood the light. That's what they grasped and understood. But in the end, the scenes were healers, doctors, using plants and prayers. But their concept of understanding salvation, an anointed one, and a redeemer, and how it carries to the future, I think they're very, very important and not talked enough about. So I hope you enjoyed that.
Oh yeah, that was wonderful. Enjoyed it all, and a lot of great insights. Excuse me. We should probably also bring in the Therapeutae, which Eusebius and a few others talk about them. Just for the audience, do you associate the Therapeutae with these scenes? Are they kind of the same brotherhood, or what has your research taught you?
I think they're separate. The scenes are very exclusive. So a lot of people say that this person or that person belonged to the scene or scene community. You kind of had to be born into it. So it's hard for external people to get into the brotherhood, just like I couldn't get into the hippie group. I mean, it was they didn't buy it. They just really didn't buy it. So it looked at me, but so it's one of those. So the scenes are very exclusive, I thought.
Interesting, yeah. And there was definitely these brotherhoods going on. And for the teacher of righteousness, I know some have said it might have been James, the brother of Jesus, or Jesus himself. Some have said that I don't know about the wicked priest, but there's a deceiver, might be Paul of Tarsus. Where do you stand with these theories?
The teacher of righteousness is interesting because he had to be one of the brothers. I kind of picture him living in Masada, really close to the people that studied the scrolls. For him to get that name and that title, he must have incredible insight himself. So who could he be? He would not have been the Nazarene, but it could have been.
Yeah, because Jesus was gone by then, but James was still around.
Well, he would have had to spend fair amount of time in the Masada.
Yeah, that's
So
true.
James, if that was James, that would have to be that. But they never identified him to the Pharisees nor to the Romans who came knocking. So they make when they want to apply sod. I mean, they can they can hide things. They're just good at that.
Yeah. Well, it is a mystery. And what do you think of Paul of Tarsus?
I'll be honest, I don't know all that much about him relating to the Essenes.
Mhm.
It's just amazed me that that connection was trying to make. I don't know if that's possible. I'll be honest.
He was a
Yeah.
tax collector, right? So I don't doubt if he was related to them, except maybe trying to get taxes out of him until his conversion, right?
Yeah. Well, I thought he was a Pharisee, not a tax collector.
No, he was Paul was a tax collector. He was Saul when he was Saul. He was a tax collector. He went around persecuting the Christians and so forth.
Yeah, I know
Remember?
that.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and he was tax collector. He was the IRS for the Pharisees.
Yeah, but even when he converted, he still stepped on a lot of toes. There was a lot of friction between him and Peter and
Oh yeah,
James, and this is even an apocrypha. So
he just switched toes, I think. How
I
about
don't
John the
think.
Baptist? Was he the teacher of righteousness? Could he have been a candidate for that?
Well, John was more of a he's a traveling preacher that actually had his own disciples. So that was interesting about John. Could that have been him?
he lost his head before he could do it. Ha ha ha
Yeah.
ha. Somebody had to
That's
say
a possibility. At some point he just said, "I'm tired of this, and I'm going to go preach strongly against the leadership." That's a possibility.
Or he was a missionary, right? He was a missionary for the Essenes. They sent him out, preaching. And
He
maybe
was
that.
definitely in the scene. So that's a possibility. I hadn't thought about
Yeah.
that.
And then somebody took over the group, right? The what they call it, the liar, the spreader of lies, whatever it is. Help me out here. The teacher of lies, man of lies,
Yeah,
took over.
something wicked. Yeah, wicked something. Yeah,
Something wicked.
Not sure about
something
that.
wicked this way comes.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then do I have? I know I've got a whole bunch of notes here, even as we were talking. But Vance, do you have a question, or does the audience have a question?
I don't see any questions from the audience lately. And I just asked some of my questions. Well, what kind of surprising things, revelations do we find in the Dead Sea Scrolls that aren't in the traditional, Old Testament or New Testament? What kinds of things? Is the theology a lot different, or what is?
Well, they were not. It amazed me that although they studied, they did not have formal temple practices within their communities. So although they would study and talk that type of thing, they weren't doing like regular services.
Yeah.
So that was it. But I think people just don't understand how they did not want to be part of a formal religion. Their strength was really when somebody got injured, they're looking for plants and herbs to heal, which is really contrary even at that time to formal Pharisee doctors, that type of thing. They weren't trying to do that. So I just thought it was interesting that they were such outsiders that people have no idea that's what allowed them to gain this intellect, this wisdom of the constellation of the stars and how it connects to spirituality. And I don't think they get credit for that.
Yeah. So all that was in the scrolls, at least if you looked at them the right way, right? So
Yeah.
that's what you're saying. Interesting.
Yeah, they were very, when they say they studied roots and stones for healing, they meant it. So if you had an injury, they're looking to heal you with roots and stones.
Interesting.
So because remember back then a broken ankle could not set properly or not healed properly could make you disabled back then.
Yeah.
So, back then it's very important to heal properly. So they're very good at that.
Yeah. Do we know any particular personalities that were, known to be authors of any of the Dead Sea Scrolls? Any attributions?
The one that I used, there's a few books out there. The one that Geza Vermes, Geza Vermes, Vermes, he was the one that was closest to getting the original work out publicly and officially by the community, 1962. There's been a few revisions from then, but that's the book I used, and he did a very, very good job. But he also gave credit to a lot of religious people help do the research to get this work out. A lot of them were Catholic priests. A lot of them were, I think there was one at the end of Mormon priest got to be part of it. But they were after this, really hard for this kid. The first book came out in 62. They were good after a good first 10 years. Just to, they gave up their life to get this thing.
Wow.
They knew how important it was. So this is a big thing. They don't understand the how it goes forward, connecting to the constellation, but how they had this intelligence 2,000 years ago and take it forward. Just amazing. They're the ones that created the horoscopes because they studied the constellation. Well, that was 2,000 years ago, and they're not looked at from that point of view. They're looking at just scroll writers. Well, they were way beyond that.
Yeah, I wonder if they had any intercourse with the Greeks. I mean, intellectual type.
I think for astrology, they probably got a lot from the Babylonians, who were also men.
Yeah, those guys too, right?
Yeah.
The Mesopotamians were at their level at that same time period. That was the only community that I saw. I always felt that they accepted philosophies and studies from outside groups that came in. Mm-hmm. So if you want to study concept from India, from Buddha, from those type of things, they had the open mind to listen to you. They had been repressed by obviously the religious Pharisees, and they want open-mindedness was a great concept. So, that's when I write in that fashion to have that kind of open mind.
Here's a question from the Chris Newberry. He wants to know if the Essenes connect in any way to the cult of Horus / Mars or Hyksos Aryans.
I don't know if I have any answer. I do believe that their knowledge of the constellation, if it connects to that, there would be they could work. There'd be a relationship there.
Yeah, well, I mean, the Jews definitely had a connection to Egypt. We know that.
Yes.
So, who knows? It's an interesting question. Why do you think we don't know of very many individuals from the Essenes group? I mean, we know about John the Baptist and Jesus and the teacher of righteousness and the spreader of lies or whatever, but were there any other personalities that we know, from other literature or the scrolls or any individuals from the Essenes back then? No.
The entire Torah is in the scrolls. There's nothing. The entire Torah was in the Dead Sea Scrolls. It was just that there were about 4 or 5 books that were not in the Torah.
Oh, I see.
And the ones I focused on was the Book of
Enoch, right?
Same with the Book of Esther. That wasn't in there in the Torah either. But there were about 4 or 5 books only that were not in what the Torah had. So to answer your question, though, the Essenes were just that. I mean, like the hippie movement, you had maybe Abby Hoffman, if that was one of them. You had a couple you mentioned, but you didn't really have a whole few people that really identified being hippies or long. They're just long hairs. But the Essenes kind of the same way. They were a community into themselves who kept to themselves, but that's how they survived because they didn't want to be poached and talked about and to be in the public of the newspapers.
And they live far away from the main community, right?
Yeah.
They live, they were remote area.
When they traveled to various cities, there were Essenes within the city, but they weren't openly practicing their stuff because they knew the Pharisees would come down. Very religious time, obviously.
Yeah.
And the Pharisees would come down on them, so they didn't openly practice any of their faith within the cities. It wasn't, in their homes, different story.
Heretics.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, for the audience, there's 930 scrolls. It includes Genesis, Psalms. I've heard that they have found copies of the Epistle of Timothy and some of the later ones. Have to double check that one. Lakme, Enoch, of course, and that's my question. Isn't it true that whenever the Jewish war started, a lot of the temple priests gave scrolls to the Qumran community to hide it? Have you heard that one?
The Essenes hid pretty much all the important scrolls that the Pharisees had.
Mm-hmm.
And they also hid their own scrolls from rural areas. So they brought them into the Masada area and hid them into those rockety caves. And what's interesting about that is that they did hide them, and nobody has found the legend of, or a drawing or a map of where and what these caves represent and where they're at. They would have done that because they're very educated people. Nobody's found that. So they found about 12 caves now. You think about it, it's probably 15 or 16 or more, and we just haven't found those yet.
Yeah. The sands or the areas out there hopefully have more treasures. And Masada, could you tell the audience about that, or who was in control of this fortress? I don't know. You ever see? I remember watching a movie of Masada, and Peter O'Toole played the Roman soldier, and I don't know if you watch it, Anthony, but it's 2 hours of this siege, and Peter O'Toole becomes kind of friends with the leader of the Jews, and then he's all heartbroken because they finally storm Masada after all these years, and all the Hebrews or Judeans have killed themselves. And it's very Hollywood, of course, but cool movie when I was a kid. It really struck with me. But tell us about Masada. Who was in control of it during the whole time?
Masada itself was a fort, a buildings. It was probably about a half an acre diameter or so forth. But what's interesting about this, so the pyramid, they had underground waters that fed the Masada with water, with clean water, fresh artesian water type of thing, that filled the cisterns. I think there was about 12 or 13 cisterns, and the brotherhood themselves would bathe in the morning and bathe in the evening, and so they bathed before they went to work, and then after, and they're always very clean. And because you imagine back then things were not all that clean, but to the Masada, it was very important to have a very clean location. And within there, they had other rooms that were for prayer, other rooms that were for writing scrolls. The copper scrolls were one place that is about a 27-foot copper scroll. It was we think it was made right there. So in those scrolls, they would study and talk about and share philosophies of who wrote this or who wrote that and how it came to them. And then it's very important that they had the scroll of astrology, where you can identify the constellations. And that was very interesting that even back then to watch the constellation of a new age come in by eye, it takes about a year. It takes a long time. So they had that forthwith to do that. So, and in that, they I don't know. I knew they ate a lot of vegetables, and they did eat goat, obviously, but in a very desolate, dry area, they really survived and kept to themselves.
Yeah, and when they finally decided to end it or end themselves, it wasn't like Jim Jones and Kool-Aid, right? It was the traditional Hebrew way of just drawing lots and everybody kills each other.
Well, what happened is that the Romans had, they used to build to attack a city. All these cities had these big forts, Masada wasn't that big, but they had started building a ramp. It took quite a while to build the ramp, and once they built the ramp, then they would start ramming doors and that type of thing. And my understanding was they completed the ramp, and once they got close to, the Essene leadership knew that they're going to be storming the doors pretty quick, and everybody in there would not survive. They decided to take their lives by sword, and that's what they did. And in the scene, the Romans were shocked at seeing that. They had never seen that before, and they did not know they had the scrolls. They did know this. They did not know there was a pacifist group, and they did not find anything that could help them. And they didn't realize there was a relationship between the Pharisees and the Essenes. If they'd have known that, that would have been a different kind of story. So, like I say, they did their job. They preserved the work of Moses, and that was their purpose. So, we're fortunate for their existence.
Yeah, and because they were holed up for a few years, right?
It took a couple of years for the Romans.
Jerusalem fell, 2 years or so.
It took a couple of years for the Masada to fall. It took quite a while.
Excuse me. Oh, real quick, I just wanted to shill on my own, if I can talk with all this, but here's what did I want to show you guys. Again, here it is. Again, I have to do my marketing pitch. 10 Snackable Meditations is out, and it's doing very well. So get it out if you need, from all traditions, these quick, short sanity hacks from Buddhism to Christianity to occultism, from Gurdjieff and others. It's something to, I don't know about save the day or seize the, it is, I don't know about seize the day, but it will save your day. And it's selling really well, and the feedback has been incredible. And I just wanted to announce that it will be out soon in Kindle, as well as Audible, as well as a print edition. But right now you can get it as a PDF on the show notes. I'll have it on the show notes along with Anthony's information. So check it out. And here's something I wanted to share with you guys, the world that we live in. But Kindle accepted it without a problem. But then Audible, even though they're both owned by Amazon, they rejected my cover, because for Kindle, it's fine to say shitty, but Audible said it was a profanity. So they said put an asterisk on it and then send it to Audible for the audiobook. So this is what I do. So this is the challenge with, working on the internet and everything else. But yes, I narrate the audiobook, and it will be out on Audible, hopefully before the holidays. Same with the Kindle and the print edition. So that's basically my little pitch, or as you would get.
I have a question for you.
Shoot.
How will this help your esoteric community understand that there are, formal relationships connecting the Essene to the esoteric, and actual, dictionaries and the constellations and sod words? Does that make a difference to your community, knowing that those exist?
Oh, of course. I mean, one of the goals of this show has always been to show not just the esoteric parts of things, but to understand that the ancients were very connected to the stars, or as we call it here, it's a term that Acharia S., my friend and author, rest in peace, is astrotheology. And scholarship has been very, you might say, drop the ball, probably because nobody looks at the sky anymore or understands these texts, how important the stars, the processions of the equinox, all this stuff was very important. And in this show, we've shown from how the Gnostics were involved with not just astrology, astrotheology, same with the Hermetics, same with and the ancient Jews too. More and more scholars are realizing that the Hebrews and the Judeans were very much interested. It was an essential part of their theology, of their mysticism.
Mm-hmm.
So your work certainly adds to it and supports it, and makes sure that we don't forget that dimension. I mean, it's, I almost tell people, go ahead and read a book, even Snackable Meditation, but you want to understand these texts from the book of Job to the four gospels, go outside in the stars, learn the stars, recite it in the stars, see why the moon and the sun are moving and all that. So, and of course, the book of Enoch is essential as a foundation for the Gnostics, the Essenes, all these groups. It was a foundational text as well. And of course, the Essenes is very popular. It's one of the requests I get the most. People, there's something about these scenes that really gets people interested, and people want more. They want more insights because, let's be honest, Anthony, there's not much around them. I mean, with the Gnostics, it got erased, but then came the Nag Hammadi library. With the scenes, we still can't put a finger on them exactly, you would say.
I hope I helped to share light of what they valued.
Mm-hmm.
This is their astrotheology thinking group that follow the stars and try to make connections and place value for their membership. So that would have been the job of that teacher of righteousness, Victor, that you're talking about. So it's very important. So, and I think it's important because, why do we have this very unique blue planet, and why is it valued? It's going to be so unique that they don't find too many of these, and why is it connected to astrology, and suddenly we find alien beings very curious about this, and they're going to give credit to those who study and who are aware of this. And so where you see this play out, they're giving, the Egyptians with those big massive rocks. Well, how those get moved? Who got the benefit of that? And those with this that study the astrology. So they're very important.
Oh, I would agree. As Hermes said, as above, so below. We are in the universe, but the universe is within us. The zodiac,
Absolutely.
the stars. It is a reflection of our mind, and we are a reflection and a manifestation of this dance up in the heavens and what's going on there. What do you think, Vance? Or do you have question, or does the audience have question as we get to the later part of this very interesting show?
Haven't seen questions, but I think really it is important to think about things like the Essenes. The mysteries are always a good place to start. They tell us that we don't know everything, and the universe is more complicated. And there are people in the past that understood and appreciated that. When we look at the sky, they have meaning. They were creating their meaning, by looking deeper into things than the people around them. And that there were good examples, weren't they, Miguel? The Essenes were good examples of, how you have to get away from the mainstream thinking, which grounds you into the everyday. And that's kind of really, oh, look, somebody asked you, you did. Okay, now, Nate, you're going to have to ask it again because it scrolled off.
Uh-oh, here we go again. Is the email coming?
Nice. He wants to know if the Essenes knew about the band Tool. No.
I believe there is a scroll. They have the album lyrics in one of the
Did they make a Dead Sea Scrolls song, the Tool?
Yeah. So I think it was called The Romans Are Tools. So.
Yeah, there's been a lot of activity in the chat room, but it was hard to pick out questions here.
Somebody wants to know, how do we buy the AI and Messiah book? Jude, and thanks for your comments. Is that where do we get it? Amazon, anywhere else?
Amazon's probably the most efficient way to get that book.
And I'll have it in the show notes again. Anthony's website, I'll have his book and links. Right after this interview, I'll have it on the show notes and on the audio version. So you will find a way to find Anthony's gnosis. And yes, and I think too, these scenes are like the Gnostics. They are the ones who, like Tommy from The Who, said, we're not going to take it. Never did and never will. They decided, we don't have to play this game. We know we are from heaven. We are higher than all these constructs of the earth. We know we can commune with the stars and the spirits, and we have the wisdom of the ancients. And they said, we're just going to get away from society like the hippies in Colorado. Except, yeah, I don't know. Hopefully, if we break away from society, we'll be a little bit more tolerant towards people, right, Anthony?
Well, that's the objective, is to have the wisdom to know that, especially religious groups, where they start knowing about Jesus when he started preaching at age 30.
Mhm.
Well, I'm sure that he saw processions of philosophies and points of view and other type of things passing through, his neighborhoods, Galilee, and he learned, and that's why he had that open mind to do that, and it can help him with his philosophies and connecting with people, and that's what this is all about: is having a broad point of mind to connect with people. It's just so important to have. That's what allows me to be a writer, is this broad understanding of accepting other points of view that contribute to society, and there's going to be a possibility of healing, I think, with the Jewish community and the Christian community, because of the wisdom of the Essenes, and that's where it's going to come from. So if you have two open minds that approach it from that point of view, you can really connect to what the knowledge of the Essenes, and then you have a home run there.
And you feel that the Messiah will come from the Jewish community?
Well, it's that, and the fact that the Ladino hermanos were praying for a savior, and when that book of the Exodus play came to me, and that prayer was to a Jewish Messiah, or the anointed one. And then second, I think it's just their turn. They've been waiting over 4,000 years plus for their Messiah to arrive, and I really just think it's their turn. The timing is right. There's some issues that need to be resolved, and I'm hopeful that it doesn't just lead to end of days. I'm expecting that. But, if we take care of our planet and make it healthy, that's a strong possibility. And I can't say that I'm receiving open-mindedness towards that for the Jewish community, but I do know it's definitely a plausible, possible concept that can apply. So I think I think positive on this.
Good deal. And yeah, and for the audience, when he says Ladinos, he's meaning Hispanic Jews or Jewish Hispanics. And no, I hope nobody ever says the term Latinx, which is a really dumb term. But also, I remember talking to somebody, he was a Jew from Cuba, and they call themselves Jubans. So it's interesting. People will come with some term for something. Doesn't matter what your culture is, you'll come with some term. I know from Portugal, there's all these strange terms for Portuguese people here and there and all that. So, but awesome. Well, as we get to the end, Vance, any last questions?
They're pouring in
Nate
here.
Remember? All right. Well, hit us.
I got Nate's here.
All right. What does Nate say?
Okay. He wants to know, what does the symbolic meaning of Aquarius have to do with anointed one? Aquarius being an air sign, as Aries was one sign, Pisces another. What does Aquarius signify to you, Anthony, in these times?
Aquarius is our current age, and the reason it's important to now into the Essenes and us is that a significant historical figure arrives typically at the beginning of a new age, and we're in the new age of Aquarius, the beginning of the 21st century. And my premise is that new historical figure is going to be a Jewish Messiah, the anointed one.
So what's the connection between Aquarius and anointing? I think that's what he's driving at.
Well, the Aquarius the picture of Aquarius is a picture with a woman in it, but the real, and the connection could be water, but the real connection really is a new historical figure coming at the beginning of the age of Aquarius.
And people get kind of turned around with it, because Aquarius is actually an air sign and not a water sign, but I've heard that confusion before. All right, that's good. And our friend Anon wants to know if you have your own prediction of when this arrival of the the Anointed One might happen. You got any idea? Any any guesses?
When the Antichrist comes, which is
Miguel
him,
drew me
I'm
that on a
honest.
few months ago. I don't know. I mean, I think it's going to be early 21st century. Is it going to be in our lifetime? I'm not sure. I do believe that's going to be a very special child, and that family will know that. And my thought is, wherever the child is born, if it's going to be along the 33rd parallel or wherever, possibly the Sephardic Jews, who are very good at concealing and hiding, can help conceal that child or share how to do that. So the when is, I don't know, but I think it's early 21st century.
What's he going to do? Is he going to save? I mean, Jews are already in their promised land now. What's he going to do? Are you going to save the world, or?
Well, that child will have very, very special skills. And picture a time when maybe artificial intelligence has control of everything. So you walk outside, you're watched. Anything you say is watched, and they're rubbing out religion. They're rubbing out church structures and organizations. They remove all the tax advantage of the religious communities, and so that Messiah will have a very important purpose at that time. That would be to be a rebellion with the believers, and that's its purpose.
So maybe he'll be a holy hacker, right?
Well, yeah, he's going to have to be able to get
Yeah.
the level of intelligence of computers.
Right. Going to have to nullify the enslaving technology.
There you go.
Chris Newberry wants to know.
So that means he'll have a social media account or not?
I don't think so.
I don't know.
You'll need one today.
Yeah. Insta Messiah, right? Account. Chris Newberry wants to know what's the etymology of the word Essene? Where did that come from, and what is the meaning of the word Essene, and how do they pronounce it?
Essene originates meaning the word physician or divine healer.
The healer.
And that's where it comes from originally. And the word came from, I think it was from actually an Egyptian word, if I'm not mistaken. And so they've always felt themselves as healers, and later that turned into physicians. So if that helps explain that.
Therapeutae also means healer, so there's a connection there. So I think so. A couple of people are asking, could the Messiah be
a woman?
A dame?
Yes. A woman. I think there's a high possibility because, we're living a life where intelligence and working with computers and I think the new Messiah initially will be concealed, just like the Nazarene was. And so could it be a woman? I think there's a high possibility. Again, the Aquarius is the age of a woman, and the woman with the water jug could be a sign that next Messiah is a woman. So I've always connected those.
Cool. Any other questions, Vance?
Let's see. Yes, I got one more. This is kind of a different one. Philatelentist wanted to know what the significance of the Latin quote, "In the hand of the gardener lies the hand of God," and Jesus being disguised as a gardener when seen by Mary in the tomb in the Bible.
That's interesting. You bring that up. That's right. When the big rock was rolled back and Mary saw this gardener, she didn't recognize her son.
Right.
I think that, again, goes along with the word sod. You may have the Messiah out there and you don't recognize him or her, and all this stuff is going on, and the whole time you're dealing with a new Messiah, and it has to be that way for survival purposes. So the gardener was not recognized, and maybe the new Messiah will not be recognized either.
Yeah, I always thought that was interesting.
That was interesting. Again, the concept of Saw, that plays out a lot.
Awesome. Well, wonderful. This has been a great discussion, great presentation. I know I learned a few things, and I certainly feel clearer about a lot of things.
Good.
So before we go, Anthony, again, I'll have this on the show notes, but for those who will be only listening on audio, their office with the YouTube off on another tab, tell us where to find more about your homepage and all that.
The book, I think you can find all my works on Amazon, but Artificial Intelligence, The New Messiah, it's on Amazon. The book was written to give insight and connection, and let people know that what's coming at them. That's really my purpose of this is coming at you, and then are you ready? Are you going to be ready? And I know that sometimes that's not popular in this nowadays to go with the religious point of view, but that's just the way it is, and it comes to me very easily because of my background. So I just hope that people have the open mind to look at this and expect this to happen, because these grand life events, they're out of your control, and they're going to happen right if you like it or not. So, you might as well be ready, or you might as well it's not coming at you. And if you have children or have a spouse, and you got to share this with them, so they may think you're crazy, but scenes aren't crazy. The stuff happened, and things were concealed for a reason, and they come out recently, and that's why they do.
Indeed, and well said. Yes, this is just one of many apocalypses, how you want to take it, both the end of a world, the beginning of a new world, and many veils lifting up as they did. And as David Hallier says in Legion, all we can do is play our part. All we can do is know ourselves. So, and that's it. That's what these ancients taught us. Know yourself and you will know God. From these ancient mystics, from Alexandria
Yes.
to Mesopotamia to Palestine. So within you is the universe, and within you are the stars. So get busy, or from the Shawshank Redemption, get busy living or get busy dying. Morgan Freeman.
There you go.
So yes, but we are officially at the end. Birdie Num Num. So for you guys out in the chat room, great questions as always, great answers, great insights. You guys are all amazing. And first, I'll also say, Vance, thanks for keeping us company here in the desert of the real.
Oh, it's always great out here in the desert, and loved your talk, Anthony, and I learned a lot about the Essenes, and I'm better for it.
Well, if I can help you guys anyway, Miguel, and going forward with connecting to the esoteric, you just count me in to know I will get right after and get you guys some answers that that are tangible, and they can let's make this stuff going on the esoteric real for everybody.
Sounds like a plan, and yes, it's destiny, and it is the movement for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. But Anthony, as always, I enjoyed a lot our second interview, and hopefully we can connect next year, unless things fall apart and the AI takes over. But if not, hopefully we can connect next year for another show. Yeah, we'll play it by ear and see what's out there. But as always, really appreciate you coming on the show.
Thank you both.
Good night, everyone.
All right.
Good night.
We'll talk.